Jaws is considered by many to be among the greatest movies ever made, and definitely one of the most iconic, if only for a single line. The Jaws series, however, is considered to be one of the worst franchises in cinema history, with it quickly getting worse with each passing installment, due mainly to the writers going to desperate and ridiculous lengths to raise the stakes. And the lack of Steven Spielberg also didn't help its sequels either, that's a well-known fact. And today, I'd like to rank how I personally felt about every movie in the Jaws series and explain why it is I feel about them the way I do. However, unlike most ranking videos I do, I'm going to rank the movies from best to worst. Meaning the first movie I bring up is the one I consider to be best, and the final one is what I consider to be the worst. And I'm mainly doing this because it's so obvious which one is best that it'll come as more of a surprise which one I consider the worst. And there are also going to be spoilers for pretty much every movie in the franchise ahead. So if there's something you don't want ruined, you probably know by now what you should do. Okay. So coming in at number 1, and therefore the best movie, would be the original Jaws. No surprise there. With a young Steven Spielberg at the helm, and a great villain in the form of the Great White Shark, and not to mention great performances from Roy Scheider, Robert Shaw, and Richard Dreyfuss, as well as a pretty good dynamic between them, this movie easily earns its spot as one of the greatest thrillers of all time. And for such an inexperienced director, Spielberg nails each and every decision and change he made to the book, up to and including the iconic death of the shark, as well as letting Roy Scheider improvise the movie's most iconic line. Frankly, it's so great, there's really nothing else I can say that hasn't already been said 100 times over. So next at number 2, meaning second best, or more accurately, third worst, would be Jaws 2. And again, that probably shouldn't come as a surprise. Though not nearly as good as the original movie, it's still miles better than either of its follow-ups, mainly due to the committed performance of Roy Scheider. Seriously. He must have known the script wasn't great, but he's still clearly doing everything he can to try and sell Brody's frustration and paranoia, and in the process probably makes the movie a lot better than it would have been without him, as both of its sequels prove. But other than that, the only other thing to really praise is some of the shark's kills, which aren't actually too bad, as well as the shark's own death as well. Because while it'll never be as great as the original blowing up, it still makes for a somewhat thrilling finale, if only once again because of Roy Scheider's performance. But let me just say right now, that is where anything good about these movies pretty much comes to an end. And now at number 3, which would be the second worst one, would actually be Jaws: The Revenge. Now I know that may come as a surprise to some people, especially because the fourth movie is often considered to be among the worst movies ever made, but here's the thing. At least it still feels like a movie. And not to mention, Michael Caine somehow makes the whole thing just a little more watchable. But just because I didn't rank it last doesn't mean I don't think it's bad. I mean, the plot is ridiculous, a lot of stuff just plain doesn't make sense, and the acting, again, with a few exceptions mainly having to do with Michael Caine, is pretty bad. Basically, it's any bad film lover's dream movie, and has the reputation it does for a reason. But for reasons I'll get into in a second, I do believe it just barely misses being the worst of the franchise. So finally at number 4, and dead last and therefore the worst, would be Jaws 3D. Now, as I touched on before, I know that might seem like the wrong choice to some of you, but please let me explain. Because as I said before, Jaws the Revenge, if nothing else, at least feels like a movie. It feels like something that was made by a professional film crew to be shown in a movie theater. But the same cannot be said for Jaws 3D. I mean, everything is just so badly made here that it feels as if it were made by a group of college students for a film project, and one worthy of an F at that. I mean, the acting, the effects, the plot, and anything else you can think of. It's all horrendous in pretty much the most literal sense of the word possible. Again, at least Jaws the Revenge has an air of professionalism around it. Jaws 3D, on the other hand, is so badly made that grindhouse theaters that only show bad B and C level movies were probably embarrassed to show it. I mean, I am not kidding when I say that Roger Corman's worst movie could run circles around this. Which does make sense, considering, Roger Corman was actually a very talented filmmaker who did at least try to make his movies good. To put it simply, I believe that Jaws 3D is not only the worst movie in the Jaws series, but also one of the worst movies ever made, period. I honestly believe that a movie this bad could not have been made if it was done on purpose, especially when it comes to its extremely amateur style of filmmaking. Seriously, Jaws the Revenge may not have much, but at least it doesn't have that extreme amateurism that plagues Jaws 3D, at least as far as actual filming is concerned. Okay, I think I've torn into Jaws 3D long enough. So now I'd like to hear from all of you. How would you rank the Jaws franchise? And does it match up with what I had to say on them, or not? Whatever you think, please let me know in the comments below. And let me just once again stress that you do not have to agree with anything I said in this video if you don't want to. You are absolutely entitled to your own opinion, and if you think I was wrong about anything I said, that's completely fine. And thank you all for watching. I really appreciate all of it, and I hope to see you all next time.